Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back. You are tuned into Women's AM. I'm your host Zara, and today I'm joined by Sister Nusrat, Sister Nazia, and our special guest Zara Faris. Assalamu alaikum again, Sister Zara. I hear that you've been to Malaysia for an amazing speaker tour for women. Could you tell me a little bit more about what happened there?
Sure, it really was amazing. So I was invited to Malaysia to give a series of lectures at universities and other organisations around the concepts of liberalism, feminism and Islam in general. It was such an exciting thing to see a Muslim country which was scientifically or economically stable, and it was really uplifting to see that, because a lot of the time when we visit the Muslim world, you know, they're in a state a lot of the time of decline or, you know, degradation, and to see that, to see flourishing there, to see intellectually engaged and active and thinking about things, it was really wonderful. So we had a series of lectures around Malaysia. We were also supposed to have a debate with an organisation there called Sisters in Islam. Unfortunately, they pulled out at the last minute, so that didn't go ahead, sadly. But the tour still was described as very successful. So it was wonderful to see.
So what sort of topics did you give sort of speaks on? What topics did you?
So we had subjects like the titles were somewhat to draw people in. So we had a title called "The Collapse of the Gender Equality Experiment." So discussing the feminist approach to equality and egalitarianism. We had feminism as the heroine of the masses.
Oh, wow.
Heroine with an E in brackets. So is it the hero, or is it more like the opium of the masses? So all of these titles were things that, you know, perhaps were to get people thinking before coming, not to make any preconceived judgments about what might be the subjects of discussion. We had very packed out audiences. And
I'm sure it raised a lot of questions for the sisters out there.
Yes, it did, but a lot of fruitful discussion as well. So I've been invited back to the region for September, this time to Singapore. So should be the second foray into that archipelago. So,
oh, wow, I'd love to watch a few clips of that if possible.
Inshallah, it will be uploaded onto the internet, so you should be able to see some of those.
Jazakallah for your comments. Well, it's great to meet you, sister. I'm sure it's going to be a great discussion, so without further ado, let's go straight to her views, where today's topic will be exploring technology. In Islam, both religious and worldly knowledge hold an important place. Early Muslims pursued knowledge, resulting in extraordinary advances in science, health, astronomy, and many other fields. With vast advances in the last few decades, we will explore what Islam says about the ever-changing world of technology. What can we learn from the legacy of those early Muslims, and how do we balance our usage of modern technology? Well, we'll be exploring all these questions only today on Women's AM. And don't forget, you can join into our discussion by calling in. The number will be appearing on your screens right now. And you can also tweet us at #IslamChannel, #WAM15. Sister Zara, back to you. With the discussion of technology, what does Islam say about it, and what are the sort of usages that we can use technology to embrace Islam a little bit further?
Well, Islam has a very interesting approach to science and technology in general. I think the first thing to realise is that technology is the product of science, and so it's a broader discussion. But the key thing about Islam is that it is an impetus to technological advancement, and it's not an inhibitor. A lot of the time people perceive religion as something that holds back scientific or technological advancement. This is a very significant misconception that exists throughout history books. What's interesting to note is that one of the key periods of technological and scientific advancement in the West was in the absence of secularism. So it was whilst, you know, many of the scientists and pioneers were actually of Catholic or Protestant religious background. So the first thing to realise is that religion itself doesn't impede scientific progress. Islam itself, it actually instructs us to pursue in addition to the spiritual well-being, but also well-being in the material world. So, for example, it tells us to improve our understanding of medicine. So we know the hadith narration where the Prophet said that there is, you know, a cure for all, you know, illnesses. So treat them. So there is the impetus or the ideal to advance, you know, medicine and that kind of science and technology. We are told to improve living conditions, so it's a charity to remove harm from the road if you're like an obstacle in the road. So we're told to improve the material environment around us there as well. So it really encourages us to pursue and to advance in these things, but not for the sake of itself. So it's not science for the sake of science or technology for the sake of technology, but to serve some purpose, either through the betterment of living conditions for society overall, and thereby serving the creator, or through helping others who are in need as well. And so it gives these two criteria. The first is the ideals to strive for, so it gives us the goals, but it also asks us to constantly be curious about the material world. So the Quran, for example, says, do you not think how the camels are made, how the sky is raised up, how? So it asks us to constantly be thinking about problems and constantly be thinking about how to solve these problems.
So it's all about reflection, really, on Earth and bringing it back to Islam. You've mentioned some examples of technology. It's developed so much. Do we have any examples of the discoveries that they made early on in the Muslim world, Sister Nadia?
Before I go through a whole comprehensive list, there's something I just wanted. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Of course, it's very long. There's this quote I wanted to give. It was a quote by Miss Carleton Fiorina. She's the CEO of Hewlett-Packard Corporation, and in a meeting with sort of worldwide managers in 2001, and this was just soon after 9/11, she made a very significant kind of observation about the contribution of Islamic civilization. And what she said was that its architects designed buildings that defied gravity. Its mathematicians created algebra and algorithms that would enable building of computers and the creation of encryption. Its doctors examined the human body and found new cures for diseases. Its astronomers looked into the heavens, named the stars, and paved the way for space and travel exploration. Wow. So for me, that sum quotes it up. And the thing is, we're so used to, and I'm sure we've all picked up books that have gone through all the inventions, innovations that the Muslim civilization brought forward. And the tendency is to look at it in isolation and assume that it only affected the people around them of that specific time. And this was not the case, because I tell you, the Muslim contribution towards engineering, the inventions, whatever they produced, these were the stepping stones towards what we see going into the modern 21st century. To say that you know, when you look at the amazing feats that were achieved by the Muslims, and then many of these things were introduced into Europe. So now I'm going to go through the whole list that I was talking about. So, for example, if we were to look at the fact that they furthered the technology in terms of magnetic compass, quadrants, and astrolabes, they produced navigational document charts that were so important in terms of the discovery of the New World. These were some of the information that even Christopher Columbus used. If you go to Muslim Spain, I mean, I've seen Granada, and it's incredible. It's beautiful. But when you look at what just went into, you know, just generally, if you look at it, they improved agriculture. They introduced innovations such as the water wheel to the region. If you look at what they did in terms of public health, they brought public baths, they brought paved streets, lighting, they brought irrigation systems that were so, you know, if you look at some of the water features in the Alhambra, they're 650 years old. There's still technology that was based upon what the engineers of the Muslims of that time devised. It's incredible. The irrigation system itself, I mean, this is another example. The crankshaft is something that it's, I think, one of the most revolutionary equipment, a device that was invented by Al-Jazari to raise water for irrigation. And what it does, it translates rotary into linear motion. And this is something that technology that you would find in modern machinery. It's in the internal combustion engine. Another example, distillation, if you look at science. The separation of liquids through boiling points. This was something that was established in the year 800 by Jabir ibn Hayyan. And I mean, it's incredible.
It's exhausting,
exactly. I'm just tired of saying all this. But, you know, it's incredible the achievements of what the Muslims did. And many of it wasn't just preserving old knowledge, but it was working on that knowledge, taking it forward, which is what we now see coming into the 21st century. So I think it's incredible. I think we've made a mark, and that's just something that I think is overlooked a lot.
So it's a great achievement. So we've got a caller on the line. Assalamu alaikum, sister.
Hello.
How are you, Rachel?
My name is Rachel. I'm a Christian, right? But at the same time, I'm a 50-year-old woman. But at the same time, I'm looking at, this is the first time I've watched this channel, right? And you know what? You ladies, oh, I love you guys.
Oh, thank you.
You know, it's like, I have a 30-year-old daughter, right? And, you know, you can see that this is like, it's phenomenal. It's lovely. because you're right on point about everything you guys are saying.
That was very sweet of you to call in. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching. Oh, wow, that was a lovely comment from the caller.
It just shows actually how much this show kind of impacts on people from across the spectrum of society, really.
And you have no idea who's watching.
Exactly.
That's another thing. That's great. Sorry, sister, to break off what you were saying, the inventions, I'm just excited by your endless list. Sister Nusra, do you have anything to add to that?
Well,
She's covered it all, really.
Pretty much. But actually, when we look at the inventions, one thing we need to mention that's sadly a fact is the fact that within this educational framework, we don't actually see a lot of Muslim inventions, actually, or the fact that Muslims have created this being emphasised within the curriculum. And as a result of that, they're not really getting the credit that they deserve. And sometimes it contributes to actually our knowledge of these kind of things not being as embedded in our mindset. But however, we've seen that they have made an impact within technology in various fields. Like, for example, Abu al-Qasim al-Zahrawi, his invention in surgical instruments, something very much needed in the medical field and something that we benefit from today. So it goes back to this whole idea of the fact that when they made something, they didn't look at it just specifically for that time, but they looked at how it would help future generations, so it wasn't meant for their own personal gains. Abu Qasim actually devised over 200 instruments such as scalpels, bone saws, forceps and fine scissors that are still being used today. And in addition to that, he was an author of the Method of Medicine, Kitab al-Tasrif, which is actually a 30-volume encyclopedia about medical practices, which actually some people within the world still use today as a reference point. So that just shows the impact it's always had. There's Ibn Firnas, who did what we call the flying contraption.
And Jazakallah, Sister Nusra, for all those comments from you. It's been a great start to the discussion, but unfortunately we have to take a quick break now. Stay where you are, as we'll be coming back to this discussion in just a few minutes. But before that, here's this week's competition. This week on Women's